Hi, this is Sam Kotera here with another Gain Grades video. For this video we're going to be looking at memorization, and more specifically we're going to be looking at a really slick system that you can apply to just about any list or thing you need to put in chronological order, and it really helps you memorize quickly and efficiently. There's many methods that have been created to help individuals memorize, and what I am trying to offer here is the best one from my experience. And the reason it's the best one from my experience is basically because although this is a mnemonic device, and we've seen a lot of mnemonic devices before, this one's reusable. You can use it over and over again with different concepts, different content areas, and you can always have good results with this mnemonic device. So it's more universal, and once you master the basics of it, you can apply it to a lot of other areas of your life too. And if you watched my webinar on the psychology of learning, and I encourage you to, then you know it is essential to relate new ideas that you're learning to prior knowledge. So to relate this new mnemonic device that I'm going to teach you to prior knowledge, I have a question for you. And here's the question to consider. Why is it easy for most people to remember all of the rules in a game like Circle of Death, the drinking game, so quickly? Most of you, if you're in college, have probably played Circle of Death, or at least heard of it. And if you haven't, here are just some example, it's also called waterfall, so some example waterfall rules. And they vary a little depending on who you're playing with, but if you were to say flip over a 2, you'd have to take 2 drinks. If you flipped over a 3, you could give out 3 drinks. If you flipped over a 4 in this game, it'd be a rush to who could get their hands to the floor, and the last person to get their hands to the floor would have to drink. 5 would be a hand jive, which is the first person makes some sort of hand movement. The second person in line would make the previous person's movement and add another, and you'd keep going in the circle until someone screwed up one of the movements. Sort of like Simon Says or something like that. 6 would be all the chicks drinking. 7 would be point to the sky, point to heaven. The last person to point to the sky has to drink. Now, what are you noticing about all these different names for each card number and how the rules apply? Because you can already see through the first half of the cards why it'd be easy to remember a lot of these. And it follows a really similar system, Circle of Death does, to the PEG system, which is the mnemonic device I'm going to teach you. And you can tell that sort of rhyming, and actually if we go back, you'll even notice with Question Master right here, starting with the same sort of sound as the card, or just rhyming with the number, are 2 primary ways that people remember the rules of this game so easily. And the PEG system is a rhyming and visualizing mnemonic device that is great for memorizing lists or remembering a particular order of things. So you'll see a lot of similarities to this and the drinking game Circle of Death. And for the purposes of this example, we will use the PEG system for a list of 10 things. You can do it for 100, you can do it for 1,000. I'm going to give you a very simplified version just so you can pick it up easily and efficiently for 1 through 10 today, and you can apply it today to anything you need to study for or other areas of life if you need to remember a list of some kind. And here's how it works. Create a list of 10 words that rhyme with the numbers 1 through 10, similar to the Circle of Death list you saw. And here's an example list if you want to make it easy on yourself. And this is actually a synthesis of a couple of other people's lists I've looked at myself. So number 1 is bun, which of course they rhyme together, and all these do. 2 shoe, 3 tree, 4 door, 5 hive, like a beehive, 6 bricks, 7 heaven, 8 plate, 9 line, 10 den. So the trick is to actually memorize these 10 things: the bun, shoe, tree, door, hive, bricks, heaven, plate, line, den. And after you do this a couple times, these will come really easy. This isn't the tricky part, if you'd even say there is a tricky part at all. But the next part is, once you kind of get this part down, the 10 ideas that are associated with each number, is to connect these words with the list you are trying to remember. This list, in our example, can obviously be 10 or less items. And let's take events in the American Revolution as an example for this. And I just took 8 rather large occurrences throughout the American Revolution to do as a demonstration. So we're only going to use those first 8 out of the 10 ideas in our list. So let's say we want to remember that the Sugar Act was the first event of the 8 our professor wants us to memorize. And we remember that 1 was bun. So we think of like a hot dog or a brat bun. And we want to associate that with the Sugar Act. So what we want to do here is make a visualization in our heads, and it usually helps to close your eyes and really think of a very vivid picture. So just do that for the Sugar Act and a bun. And to simplify that further, let's just take some sugar and a bun. So close your eyes and try to imagine a picture with, I don't know, maybe a hot dog bun just full of sugar. Where a hot dog or a brat would normally be, you see a bunch of sugar. And I know this sounds silly, but really try to imagine that in your head. And I guarantee that when it comes back on a test, you'd actually remember something like this. And I know my Photoshop skills are extraordinary. You can give me a high five the next time you see me. But if you do imagine something like this and you really take 10 seconds to visualize it, it becomes really easy to start remembering this stuff. Now if we go back to the second thing on the American Revolution timeline, we have the Quartering Act. And if you don't know what the Quartering Act was, I think it dealt, if I remember correctly, it dealt a lot with particular cities and the people within those cities having to open up their buildings and dwellings for the British military to actually live in and sleep in. So the point was that those living in the colonies were essentially having to pay another tax to house these military men from Britain, which they didn't agree with very much. So the Quartering Act came after the Sugar Act. So you've got a picture of a bun with sugar in it for the first event. And bun is 1, so you remember that it's the first. Now the next one is Quartering Act. And I just thought of a quarter personally. And if you remember, 2 was shoe. So I pictured something like this personally, with a shoe and a quarter kind of sticking out the top of it. So if you can really visualize some sort of picture in your head where there's a shoe and a quarter together, you might have a bunch of quarters making the shape of a shoe or something like that. Honestly, the most ridiculous and outlandish thing you can think of that involves the 2 things, and primarily just those 2 things, the better. Because the more absurd it is, the more likely you are to really remember that visualization for days and weeks into the future. So I thought the bun and the sugar inside of it was kind of ridiculous, so I've actually been able to remember that one quite well. And the shoe and the quarter, shoe is 2, quarter for Quartering Act. We know that's the second thing to happen. And you can go on further and further. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to keep this short and simple and just do 2 as an example. Because you want to apply this to whatever you're learning anyways, you get the point already. But go through and even use my 10 that I created, the 1 bun, the 2 shoe. go back and feel free to write down that list of 1 through 10, because those are some really common um, ideas that rhyme well with each number. But remember that the more outlandish the visual is in your head, the better. It's more memorable this way. The key is to really memorize the initial lists of words that rhyme with numbers 1 through 10. If you don't remember that 1 is bun and 2 is shoe, then it's not going to help you to make those pictures. With that said, you're going to have a pretty easy time making that connection just because of the rhyming idea. And just like with Circle of Death, it comes quickly after just a little bit of practice. So you only probably had to play Circle of Death 1 or 2 games, and you started to understand really quickly what each number stood for, what each card stood for, rather. And it's the same with this. It actually gets really simple. And once the words rhyming with 1 to 10 are memorized, the pictures associated with them come really easily too. At that point, this becomes a great technique for memorizing lists, the order of something, etc. And this can have a lot of uses outside of school too. It's a great way to remember groceries. If you're making a grocery list, instead of making the list, you can make these visualizations in your head. And this is when it becomes important to not just have those initial 10, but actually add to it. Okay, what am I going to associate with 11? What am I going to associate with 12? So on and so forth. People will do these up to 100, up to 1,000. I've only done it up to about 25 personally, but you can go really high with this if you want to. I tend to think it's not necessary to go much past 20, honestly. But it just ends up being a great organizational tool, especially if you find yourself forgetting a lot of small little things in your life, like maybe just a short little dumb homework assignment falls through the cracks when you have a bigger paper due or something. If you can make a list in your head of the different things you have to do for school, that's another great use of this tool. So start practicing with it today. And remember, the goofier the visualization, the more memorable it will be in your head anyhow. So have fun with this one.
And again, check in at www.gaingradesnow.com and sign up for the Gain Grades newsletter. And you'll be able to receive other useful tips for efficiency in college, just like this one. And you also hear about great offers on our study skills programs, which are guaranteed to reduce your study time and increase your grades. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.